Well, welcome back to everybody here in Vegas at the AMC Town Square Theater, and hello to all of our friends watching on Yahoo and live streaming around the world. It's my privilege to welcome the director, Gore Verbinski, the stars, Johnny Depp and Armie Hammer, and the producer, Mr. Jerry Bruckheimer. Talk to me about your first impressions of the Lone Ranger. When do you first remember being introduced to the world?
I grew up in the 70s, so it was like Sergio Leone and Sam Peckinpah, and not so much the Lone Ranger, but I just always responded to that relationship between Tonto and the Lone Ranger, and I thought there was a great opportunity to explore that, and with Johnny and Armie to try something different. So, I mean, it's, you know, it's all there, the silver bullet and the white horse and the hat and the mask and the code, but I think we're just doing something different. We're telling it from Tonto's perspective. He's kind of our way into the story, and you've all heard the story, but you've never heard it from the guy who was there. And he just is somebody that maybe was there, but you don't entirely trust.
Speaking of Tonto, we have a question for Johnny Depp. This is coming from Linda Fortman out in New Haven, Indiana. Johnny, how did you prepare for your interesting portrayal of Tonto, and did you research Native American culture?
Well, preparing for the role of Tonto, you know, it was just really trying to find a way in that was, or into the character that was, you know, different. And not to take anything away from what the great Jay Silverheels did, but I don't know, I was always, as a kid, when I watched the show, I just didn't understand why Tonto was the sidekick. It just, I always, you know, felt a little unnerved about it. So, as far as research in terms of the Native Americans and the Comanche and the Navajo and those people out, the human beings in that area and all nations, really, just the goal really was to try to, in my own small way, right the many wrongs that have been done to those people, and to show Tonto with not only as a proud warrior, but you know, also as a man outside, you know, just a bit outside.
We have a question coming from Deborah out in Racine, Wisconsin. This is for Armie Hammer. Did you have a chance to learn how to ride a horse? Were you already familiar with horseback riding?
Yeah, I mean, I was familiar with horseback riding. I'd never ridden a horse through a moving train or on top of a bank before, so those were both new. Yeah, there was a fun process called Cowboy Boot Camp, where they just basically took all the actors and stuck us on a working horse ranch out in New Mexico, and basically said, "We're going to beat the city out of you," and they did. They tried anyway.
This is from James Schaffer out in Parker, Colorado, and I think it's really appropriate for the entire group up here on stage. What was the most fun location you guys had to shoot the movie in?
Oh, God. We were shot in 5 states, and it rained and it snowed, and it was 125 degrees, and we still are getting dust out of our ears. I didn't think it was the hardest. It's the hardest film I've ever been on. It was absolutely nuts. The train never worked. You know, every time you show up, they're pulling some gears out of the bottom. I mean, everything. It was just, it was insane.
Monument Valley was pretty good, though.
Monument Valley. I like Creed. Creed, Colorado was.
Creed,
Creed was a very cool place.
Beautiful.
Jerry, you've worked on huge movies over the years. How does this one stack up against some of the other big blockbusters? When you were on set, did you realize, wow, this is just as big as, or even bigger than anything I've done?
Yeah, it's an enormous movie. As you can see from the footage that we looked at in the trailer, it's gigantic. We built trains and we trekked those trains over 5 states and had an enormous cast of actors and a huge production behind the camera. So it was one of the fun adventures that took from February to October to finish. So it was a long journey, but a wonderful journey.
We have some questions coming in from our friends at Yahoo. Liz Swart wants to know from Armie, what did it feel like to put on the mask for the first time? That's an iconic symbol.
There was a lot of mask things went on. We did a lot of mask fittings. It never really felt surreal putting the mask on for the first time. It was just more of like a bunch of us standing in a room with 100 different kinds of masks and just try this one on. Okay, no, try this one on. Then try this one on. Then try this one. And there was that one that just thunk, just kind of like went right on and just hit the bridge of my nose, right, and just everything perfectly. It was like, guys, I think we got it. So, I mean, I wish it was a more iconic moment. Instead, it was just like oh, this one fits.
Let's go with it.
Number 32.
But he looked great in it.
32 masks.
Nobody can tell who he is when he puts it on. It's like a force field.
Piper from St. Charles, Missouri wants to know, Johnny, you've created so many great characters in your career, and you talked a little bit about the inspiration for Tonto, but talk to me just about the last couple of movies, and even the movies you worked on with Gore. Kind of why is you guys maybe have a good thing going? This is, what, the 4th time you've worked together now?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
5, yeah.
Yeah, number 5.
Well, I mean, in terms of working with Gore, it's always a pleasure because it's always an adventure, not necessarily just in a physical sense, but an adventure into the character, and there's a shorthand, that and a great sort of understanding and a great.
Great.
No, there's just a wonderful kind of respect for absurdity and irreverence, which is the only way to go through life, I believe. And so there's just a kind of a thing that happens between, when we work together that we start feeding each other,
We got some questions from our international friends around the world. Let's go down to Australia. Johnny, what was the most challenging part of shooting this film? Particularly, we've heard a little bit about the locations and obviously seen some of the stunts. What was the toughest part for you?
Most difficult thing was, staying alive when you're on a horse that's moving at high speed, and you realize that you're under it suddenly. So staying alive on the horse was really my biggest challenge.
Jerry, as somebody behind the scenes, talk to me about the challenges of a producer on a project like this. What was the first thing that kind of jumped out at you as, all right, we got to make sure we get this right, or this is going to be something that we're going to have to overcome?
Well, it's an enormous undertaking when you're shooting in 5 different states and you're moving an enormous company behind the cameras, and we had horses and wranglers and horse trainers and just an enormous production. So I guess just moving that whole caravan from state to state was quite an ordeal for our crew and cast.
We got a question from our friends in Latin America who want to know, Armie, which characteristic from the Lone Ranger's personality would you like to have and make your own?
I don't know. He's got a good buddy he hangs out with. That's pretty good. He's got a white horse. Everybody thinks a white horse is pretty
So all the
cool.
friends around him. But
It's not the actual
anything with
character,
him
yeah.
himself?
The extenuating circumstances, yeah.
Okay.
I also wish that I found a bunch of silver. That'd be nice too.
Johnny, this is coming all the way from China. What kind of characters haven't you played, but maybe would love to someday?
Carol Channing. I mean that. She's fantastic. Carol Channing. Another guy that I would love to do the life story of is Don Rickles, which I don't know if he's well known in China, but he's a wonderful.
Here in Vegas, you got some Don Rickles fans. Yeah, there you go. Gore, this is coming from Facebook. Courtney wants to know, what was your most memorable moment filming the movie? Is there a day on set that really stands out?
Oh, God. No. There's not. There's not a day. There's not a day. But you sit in the edit room and you work on the movie, and every image that shows up is like a sense memory of just absolute misery and pain and torture, and nothing was going right, and the weather was horrendous, and so I really, I'm just sitting here watching the clip. I was like, it's like every shot comes up has a little bit of a history because, it's not just the movie, it's the process of making it, which is just insane. It's madness.